All right, so today we're diving deep into The Alchemist
Oh, The Alchemist.
by Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
And, maybe you're listening to this deep dive because you're looking for a little inspiration,
Hmm.
and maybe even a little, push toward that thing you've always kind of felt like you've been meant to do,
Hmm.
but haven't quite pursued yet.
Right.
And, well, this book might just have a few clues for you.
Hmm.
I mean, it's been a global phenomenon for a reason.
It really has, and I think part of what's so fascinating is that it's such a deceptively simple story, right?
Yeah.
We have Santiago, the shepherd, and he's off to find treasure buried near the pyramids.
Yeah, just your classic adventure tale, right?
Right, exactly.
But then you kind of quickly realize that the treasure that he's looking for isn't just some pot of gold coins at the end of the rainbow.
Exactly. It's something much deeper, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that deeper understanding of oneself, what Coyle calls our personal legend, right?
Yeah.
This unique path each of us is meant to follow.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes I have to admit, the idea of a personal legend can feel a little, well, predetermined. Like,
Mhm.
is our path already set for us?
Right.
Do we have any real choices?
Yeah, that's where it gets, I think, really nuanced because The Alchemist really doesn't shy away from this tension between fate and free will.
Right, right.
And, you think about that moment when Santiago meets Fatima in the oasis.
Oh, yeah.
He's fallen head over heels in love,
He's torn.
but he knows he has to continue on his journey.
It's like that classic dilemma,
Yeah,
love versus destiny.
right, exactly.
But how does that tie into this idea of like a predetermined path then?
Well, I think it highlights that while a personal legend might exist, it's not this rigid roadmap.
Okay.
We still have the power to make choices at every fork in the road.
Hmm.
And it's those choices that ultimately shape our path, even if the overall direction is being guided by something, well, a little bit bigger than us.
So it's more like we're co-creating our destiny, almost working in partnership with some kind of universal force.
Precisely. And to do that successfully, the book suggests we need to learn this language of the world,
Oh, yeah.
those omens and synchronicities that guide us along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Think about early on when Santiago loses all of his money to that thief.
Oh, right.
It's a setback, sure, but...
But then it forces him to get creative,
Exactly.
to rely on his instincts.
Yeah.
He ends up working for the crystal merchant,
Right.
which opens up all these new possibilities.
Right. And what initially appears as misfortune
Yeah.
becomes this turning point in his journey.
It's like that setback kind of pushed him onto a path that he may have otherwise missed
Exactly.
had he not lost all his money.
And that's the kind of omen the book is encouraging us to pay attention to.
Yeah.
These seemingly random events that hold a much deeper meaning if we're open to seeing them.
It's like trusting that there's a reason for everything,
Mm-hmm.
even if we don't quite understand it in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think there's another layer here, too.
Oh,
Because his experience at the crystal shop
yeah.
teaches him about more than just resilience.
Mm.
It exposes him to the dangers of complacency.
Oh, okay.
He sees who the merchant, despite, having this successful business,
Right.
is deeply unfulfilled,
Yeah.
trapped by this fear of pursuing his own personal legend.
So it's like a cautionary tale, too.
Right.
Even if we achieve a certain level of conventional success, if we're not aligned with our true purpose,
Mm-hmm.
we might still end up feeling empty.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think it raises the question, what does success really mean? Is it about external validation, material wealth, or is it about something deeper?
Aligning ourselves with that unique calling.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the gold that Santiago is seeking,
Right,
because we know it's not literal treasure he finds buried near the pyramids.
right, right.
The gold is symbolic of that deeper transformation that happens along the way. That wisdom, the self-awareness, the resilience he gains through embracing the journey itself.
Right. But speaking of the treasure, there's that amazing twist at the end, right?
Oh, yeah.
He finds it back in Spain,
Right.
where his journey began.
Exactly.
Like, what?
And that's what makes The Alchemist, I think, so profound.
Yeah.
It highlights that the journey itself is the real treasure.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the growth we experience,
Yeah.
the connections we forge, the lessons we learn along the way.
It really makes you wonder, what if what we're looking for is already within us,
Mm-hmm.
or closer than we think?
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to take that journey to recognize it.
Right. And I think that connects to another important theme, too, this idea of alchemy as a metaphor for personal transformation.
Right.
Just as alchemists were seeking to turn, base metals into gold,
Mm-hmm.
Santiago's journey is about refining his character, his spirit.
It's like he's turning the lead of everyday challenges
Yeah.
into the gold of, like, wisdom and self-discovery.
Exactly. And that's where we start to see the depth of Coelho's storytelling.
Yeah.
He's not just offering a feel-good adventure story.
Right.
He's prompting us to really examine our own lives, our own definitions of success and fulfillment,
Yeah.
and what it means to truly live a life of meaning.
You know, we've been talking about this idea of the personal legend, but sometimes I have to admit the book's message about just, go follow your dreams feels a little too simple, almost naive,
Yeah, I think I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It does present this very optimistic view of the world,
Right.
almost implying that, if you just follow your personal legend, everything will just fall into place.
Yeah, like it's going to be a piece of cake, right?
Right, exactly. And life isn't always that straightforward, is it?
Right. I mean, real life is messy.
Yeah.
There are setbacks and disappointments
Mm-hmm.
and systemic barriers,
Wow.
things that can make achieving those dreams incredibly difficult,
Yeah.
even if you are 100% committed.
Exactly. And those are the complexities that I think The Alchemist doesn't really fully explore.
Right.
It doesn't really dig into the role of privilege or access to resources
Right.
or those inequalities that can hold people back.
So it's like for some people reading this, it might feel a bit out of touch with their reality.
Right.
Like, oh, sure, it's easy for Santiago to chase his dreams.
Yeah.
He's a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a certain level of freedom.
Right.
He can just pick up and go.
Yeah. It's a valid point.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that this is a fable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story with a specific message to convey.
Right.
It's not a sociological treatise on achieving success in the real world.
Right. Right. So maybe it's more about that underlying principle.
Yeah. Yeah.
That pursuing your dreams, even when it's hard, even when it's not a sure thing, is still worthwhile.
Precisely. And I think that message still holds power even if we acknowledge the book's limitations.
Right.
It reminds us that we all have something unique to offer. Yeah.
That personal legend, that's worth pursuing, even when the path isn't easy.
Yeah. And even if we don't achieve that big,
Right.
externally defined success,
Yeah.
the journey can still be incredibly enriching.
Absolutely. Just think about the unexpected skills that Santiago develops, the relationships he forms, the resilience that he builds along the way.
Yeah.
Those are treasures in themselves.
Right, they really are. Speaking of those relationships, one thing that stood out to me was the way that Coelho portrays the role of mentors.
Oh, yeah.
In Santiago's journey.
Absolutely.
From the old king Melchizedek, who kind of sets him on his path in the beginning, to the crystal merchant, the camel driver, and then, of course, the alchemist himself.
Right. It's like this whole cast of characters.
Yeah, he encounters so many people who offer guidance and wisdom.
Exactly.
And they each kind of seem to represent different types of mentors. Like Melchizedek is like that wise elder archetype,
Pointing Santiago towards his destiny.
Right.
The crystal merchant, although seemingly successful, kind of serves as a cautionary example of what happens when you ignore your personal legend. Right?
And then there's the alchemist, who's this more mysterious figure
Right.
who guides Santiago not just through the desert, but through those more esoteric, spiritual aspects of his journey.
Yeah, and it suggests that we need both practical and spiritual guidance to really fully realize our personal legend.
I think so.
Yeah.
And it also highlights the importance of being open to unexpected sources of wisdom. Because these mentors appear at these really crucial moments, often when Santiago is feeling lost or doubtful.
It's like the universe is conspiring to support him.
Right.
Sending the right people into his life at the right time.
Exactly. And I think that idea connects to another important theme, this power of intuition.
Oh, yeah.
Because Santiago often has to make decisions based on gut feelings, not logic. Remember when he decides to join the caravan crossing the Sahara?
He doesn't have a rational reason. He just feels drawn to it.
Exactly. He just feels it.
Yeah.
And it's that decision that ultimately leads him to the alchemist.
Right.
His most important mentor.
Like his intuition was guiding him towards his destiny.
Exactly. The book is full of these moments where Santiago has to trust his inner voice even when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that sometimes we need to listen to our hearts, not our heads.
Yeah, and that can be scary.
Right.
Especially in a world that often prioritizes logic and reason above all else.
Exactly.
But the alchemist is suggesting that trusting our intuition, even when it seems illogical,
Yeah.
can lead us to these unexpected opportunities
Right.
and incredible breakthroughs.
Precisely. And it raises this really interesting question. What if we've been conditioned to dismiss our intuition?
Right.
That inner wisdom that often knows the way.
It makes you wonder how many opportunities we miss out on by not trusting our gut feelings.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think The Alchemist is encouraging us to reclaim that intuitive knowing, to listen to those whispers from our souls, even when they challenge our rational minds.
And maybe that's part of what makes this book so captivating, right? It speaks to that part of us that yearns for something more, that seeks meaning and purpose beyond just the material world.
Exactly. It reminds us that there's magic to life.
Yeah.
There's this mystery that we can tap into if we're willing to open our hearts and minds to the possibilities.
Yeah. Speaking of magic, we can't forget about the role of love.
Oh, absolutely.
In Santiago's journey, his connection with Fatima and the oasis adds another dimension to this whole story.
Absolutely. And it's such a powerful example of how love can be both.
Yeah.
A source of joy and a catalyst for growth.
It's interesting because at first it seems like Fatima might tempt Santiago to abandon his personal legend.
Right.
He's so drawn to her, to the peace and stability of life in the oasis.
Yeah.
And she represents that. But their love doesn't actually hold him back.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, it deepens his understanding of himself and his purpose.
Right.
He learns about sacrifice, about the importance of following his heart, even when it means making difficult choices.
Exactly.
And Fatima actually encourages him to continue on his journey,
Yeah.
knowing that he won't be fulfilled unless he pursues his destiny. It's a beautiful portrayal of love as a force that supports and empowers,
Yeah.
rather than restricts or limits.
Exactly. And it highlights this idea that love shouldn't be seen as a distraction from our dreams, but rather as a source of strength and inspiration.
Yeah. So we've talked about mentors